Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So for this afternoon, thank you for spending your time in this session. So I'll be talking about email security for tomorrow. So let me go through the agenda. So I'll just talk about why email is still the number one threat vector when you talk about the bad actors. And next, I'll talk about what's new in email security. And if we have time, we can go on with some Q&A. Okay, so just to echo the past speakers that we had this morning, so they talked about digital transformation and attack surface. So when you talk about attack surface, in TRELLIX point of view, this is the extended enterprise. So for companies to adapt in the ever-changing landscape and to gain business agility plus innovation, it requires collaboration, probably with external parties or contractors, and this represents another layer of security, a security in terms of the attack surface. So more and more, we are using collaborative tools and towards digital transformation. So talking about digital transformation, we're living in a society now that it has changed a lot. Since the pandemic era, we've been doing work from home setup and doing things that we not normally do before. So the way we shop, the way we learn, and in terms of attending trainings. So things have changed. And this digital transformation also represents another layer of a growing attack surface. And lastly, we've been adapting a lot of SaaS applications. So to effectively communicate with our counterparts, whether in local or abroad. So these SaaS applications are pretty much being used in any organization. So these introduce new threat vectors. So the topic for today is centers around email, but going outside of email. So from email, we're now seeing collaborations using different kinds of tools. And of course, enterprise applications also extends those collaboration tools, whether you're using file sync and share. So putting your files to be shared across different companies or organizations. So that also poses another threat. So, but for this afternoon, I'll be focusing more on the email. But this is what we see: the nature and velocity of collaboration is ever changing. So in TRELLIX, we have this mantra called, or we have this mantra that says that there's no such thing as a safe email. So going here, driving, or let's say going on commute, probably you might be tempted to check email. So I'm not saying that when you're driving, you have to check on your phone. That's probably if you pass by EDSA, the cameras will catch you, right? But if ever you're going to ride some Grab hailing application or ride hailing applications such as Grab, chances are when you're stuck in traffic, you're going to be checking your email. And what happens is if you check your email and there's a notifications that tells you that you have a pending transactions, you have a order from this e-commerce website, and somehow your credit card has been part of a credit card fraud, chances are you would take action. So these kinds of attacks, probably we're all familiar with social engineering, right? So, but if users are not really quite well informed of these kinds of phishing attacks and social engineering attacks, chances are they will click on those emails. So what I'm saying now is when we talk about email, so this is still one of the threat vectors that we see right now in terms of the cybersecurity space. And according to our recent studies, 91% of cyber attacks begin with spear phishing. So this is not just the phishing that we know that's being email blasted to a lot of users, but spear phishing, now you are actually targeting individuals, even large profile individuals such as CEO. So around 91%, based on our study, internal study, 91% of attacks are cyber phishing attacks begin with spear phishing. Or sometimes we hear the terms whale phishing. So these are the big targets, the CEOs, the CTOs, CISOs, and all that are. And more, customers now are adopting cloud, not just on putting workloads to the cloud, but also using SaaS applications pertaining to cloud. And one of them would be email. So we're seeing a grow as we speak. 70% of organizations use some form of email that's hosted through a cloud provider. Okay? And we're also seeing from our study that current email protections aren't sometimes good enough. Yes, they are good email gateways, but this is a study that we have done in the lab. So 3 million of attacks are missed in the year. This is just for a sample study of data of customers around 1,000 customers. So that's a lot. And barring the thunder of Abhilash this morning, he talked about ransomware, and it's being predicted that every 5 seconds there will be a ransomware attack. So these are the things that are being missed by our traditional tools. And talking about the average life cycle, so around 277 days. What does it mean? So if you would be an attack by a particular threat actor, it takes 277 days for you to recover or put your state back where it was in a normal state. So these are some of the numbers that we're seeing. And it only takes one email. So not putting into shame these companies that are on the screen, but as you would see, companies across all industries, across all verticals, are being targeted for ransomware or even a form of phishing attack or business email compromise. So it only takes one email. And sharing other statistics, so we're seeing there's a growth of using of malicious URL compared to malicious attachments. Before, we're used to security teams telling us, don't click those attachments, don't open those files, it might be malicious. But now, we're seeing a shift towards malicious URLs. So this means that there's a rampant attacks in terms of business email compromise and a malicious URL leading to a phishing website. And for every one attachment, malicious attachment, for every 7 malicious emails. So more and more, you see that there's lesser chance that attackers are still utilizing those attachments. But we're also seeing that the file types involves the common documents that we use. This is our Microsoft Office documents that are being embedded to the file. And according to on our statistics, so 10% of emails are being remediated post-delivery, meaning those 10% will be weaponized later on once it's already been delivered to the inbox of the customers. And what's the top of mind for security analysts, for researchers, and CISO? So one would be advanced threats involving malware, phishing, and business email compromise. And these are being missed by the traditional tools, probably with the lack of intelligence to know that these are malicious. And then a rampant increase in terms of spear phishing. Lack of native event correlation, meaning that once you get attacked, how do you integrate with your SOC platforms? And this is happening, too many false positives, meaning that with the alert fatigue that our security teams are experiencing, so more and more, they have lots in their plate. And because of these false negatives and false positives, so they have a lot of things to do in terms of guarding the crown jewels. And lastly would be planning to use or adapting cloud. So let's talk about what's new in email security. So from a TRELLIX standpoint, this is what we see to protect the airborne threats. So, but it's a combination of technology, intelligence, and expertise. And I'll go through these 3 elements on the succeeding slide. So it's important that you have a way to detect and defend yourselves across these different threats, integrate with SOC platform, and lastly, it must be comprehensive and resilient. So these are some of the factors that our customers are seeing when they're evaluating a email security solution. So in terms of detect and defend, so things like advanced URL defense. So once you have a email that contains a URL, so that would be scanned in a way that it will detect whether it's a malicious website that's leaning to a malicious website, or for a email attachment. So it will be scanned that in a way that it will detect whether once you detonate it on a sandbox, or we call it IVX, the intelligent virtual execution engine. So it will know whether those malwares are malicious. Okay, so it has to protect from malicious and numerous attack vectors as we go on to the succeeding slides. So these are some of the, this is not an exhaustive list, so these are some of the email categories that we're seeing. So first would be email attachments. So the malwares, the viruses, and all that. And URLs. So phishing attacks, whether you've been caught with a phishing URL and then you log in your email address and passwords and credentials and all that. So chances are, if you do that, so the attackers would now gain access to the system, and then from there can elevate those privileges and later on compromise the systems. And post-delivery weaponization. So once it passed through the checks, it doesn't go through a phishing site. But later on, after a series of weaponization, so it will now lead to a phishing site. So let's say it's set like 10 minutes and before they activate the URL. Social media coverage and impersonation. So impersonation, we're seeing that in business email compromise, someone pretending that they're the ones you're talking to, or sometimes we call it man-in-the-middle attacks, or let's say CEO fraud. So asking an employee to send a payment to another company for, let's say, accounts payable department, as being asked by a CEO to settle this payment. So those are some of the things that we're seeing as email threats. And to be able to stay ahead of those attackers, we also need to understand the evasion techniques that we're doing. So sometimes email would have this 0-point font. So that 0-point font would bypass linguistic checks and successfully lands on the inbox of our customers. Or let's say we have this thing called geo-evasion. So if a URL is being targeted, let's say Philippines. So outside of the Philippines, it will be a legitimate site. But if it's if the user is coming from the Philippines, it will now display a phishing site. So those things are what we're seeing in the field right now. So geo-evasion and utilizing ways to bypass the security measures. And the good thing about what we're doing as a company is we have this intelligence-led security with the global intelligence that we have for to gain global visibility. So across all the customers of TRELLIX, so we are doing threat intel. And those threat intel will be now shared across different customers. And detection, so we can respond to threats immediately with the use of detection capabilities and expertise coming from the threat intel. So next on the element that I have talked about earlier is integrate with SEC platform. So we have heard speakers earlier talking about how do you have a SOC platform, how do you do XDR. So those email alerts can now be ingested to an XDR that makes our SOC analysts' lives easier because they have a single pane of glass and doing those automation to remediate those compromised emails. And to be able for XDR, so this empowers the analyst to claw back. So what does it mean? So let's say talking about post-delivery weaponization. So once it arrives in the mailbox of our customers or let's say an individual, it can claw back and remediate those emails immediately. Okay, so this is part of the streaming of email to metadata. So it makes it easier to remediate and accelerate the response in terms of investigation. Okay, so it also has to be comprehensive and resilient. So it doesn't mean that, let's say, we have this tool. So what happens if that tool is not available by, let's say, there's a downtime on the provider side. So it has to be comprehensive enough that it can withstand, let's say, downtime from one region or another. So it can be, let's say, additional safeguard for those emails. So it can act as a primary hub or secure email gateway, or let's say an additional layer to the as a secondary hub. And then integration with the common email gateways that we have, the M365 and Google Workspace, and the different form factors, whether it's cloud, whether it's on-premise. So this is just an example of how automated remediations happens. So for example, you receive an email by 7:55 a.m. And once it's passed through the scanning, so it will not detect that this is a malicious email. So it passed through all these different checks, all these different AI capabilities and machine learning that our tools is using. And then once, let's say by 8:15 in the morning, so the URL is now weaponized. So let's say it activated or links to a phishing site. So it will be analyzed again in such a way that we can know that this email has been weaponized or this URL has been weaponized, and then be able to claw back and, let's say, put it on quarantine, delete, or even move those malicious email not affect the users. Okay, so this is basically a summary of what I have talked about in this afternoon. So we have to be able to protect individuals in our organizations across email, infrastructure, and cloud collaboration suite. So circling back to the first agenda, that email is still the #1 threat vector, and having a resilient infrastructure and an intelligent infrastructure to detect those threats with this global intelligence and being comprehensive enough to identify those threats. And later on, so it doesn't stop there. So it doesn't stop with just email security. So you want to be able to remediate those and integrate those with an XDR or a SOC platform. Okay, so yeah, so I still have time. So this is a QR code. We're flashing a QR code for you to, let's say, provide us feedback. By the way, talking about zero trust, you can trust that this doesn't go through a malicious link. So this is just a feedback form of how you want us to help you and get feedback on how we did on this presentation. So yeah, so that's about it. So TRELLIX, and VST says, so just feel free to reach out to us. Okay, I think I'll be staying around. So if you have any more questions, I'll be open to receive them, and just feel free to approach me or anyone from our team. All right. So thank you so much for your time. Have a good day, everyone.